up knowing the family and has such respect and affection for Ghazala. And I've heard about this for years, and Tyler, even though I keep him pretty busy, has been down canvassing for you during your primary. And what Tyler says is golden with me. Ghazala is a person who has been a career educator. As many of you know, she works at J. Sargent Reynolds. She's in charge of faculty development there, which is the development of professional development of faculty. So not really the recruiting, but helping every faculty member be better and better and better at what they do in the classroom for their students. And we need people who have a heart for public service. We need people who understand that we are a nation of immigrants, and that's a strength. We need people who will prioritize education and support for teachers, and that's what Ghazala would bring to this seat in the Senate. You get a glimpse of the kinds of things she can do by seeing what has been done in Virginia because of the legislative elections in 2017. The Democrats did not take the majority, but got very, very close in both houses. And what did that mean, getting close in both houses and electing a Democratic governor? It meant that 293,000 Virginians have health insurance, many of whom never in their life had health insurance. It means, and this didn't get a lot of attention or near as much, but as of July 1, 750,000 Virginians who had lost the ability to have a driver's license because of unpaid court costs. Now, we punish you by taking your driver's license away, so you will pay your court costs. How are you going to pay your court costs? I guess I got to get a job to pay my court costs. How are you going to get a job with no driver's license? And it was disproportionately applied to minority communities, obviously, but because of a Democratic legislator, now 750,000. We only have 9 million people in Virginia. That's almost 1 in 10 of Virginians will get driver's licenses and have the ability to do well for their family, pay court costs, and be completely in society. Here's one that is less important to Richmond, but it's really important to the state. For decades, people in Western Virginia have been complaining about lack of transportation solutions. We need to fix I-81. But their legislators complained that every time they had a chance, would vote against funding any of the fixes. This year, and I got you here. Jeremy is here from Prince William. You guys know Jeremy Pike from Prince William. And we got Betsy here. What other legislators do we have, Betsy?
We got Colette.
Colette McKeach running for Commonwealth's attorney. Okay. Colette, very glad to have you here. But the point I want to make about these guys, these legislators, is there was an opportunity this year in a bill on Ralph Northam's desk dealing with I-81, and he rewrote the bill and said, we're finally going to fund these improvements. And he sent it back down to these legislators. Now, these legislators, they don't have any votes in Western Virginia. Western Virginia legislators are Republicans who've been asking for help and then voting against their own interests again and again and again, voting against their voters' interests again and again and again. And when the bill was sent down, they voted against it again. But Democrats from Northern Virginia and Central Virginia and Hampton Roads voted to help people in Western Virginia, even though there were no votes for them in that. Don't tell me that Democrats don't care about rural voters. Yeah. Democrats care more about rural voters than rural voters elected officials often care about rural voters. But those things and other things that happened, teachers in Virginia got the first step of a pay raise that they really needed on July 1 because of a Democratic governor and Democratic legislators, but we don't have the votes yet to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. We don't have the votes yet to permanently expel disenfranchisement as a matter of a constitutional change. We don't have the votes to raise the minimum wage in Virginia. We don't have the votes to protect women's right to make their own health care decision. We don't have the votes to guarantee that the other side won't try to screw around with a rollback that Medicaid hard-won gain for hundreds of thousands of people. But we're so close. We're so close. And so the last thing I want to say, now I've said something, told you why not only is Ghazala such a good person to be elected, but elected at this particular moment, because we're so close to gains that we still need to make. I want to talk about her opponent. I don't think her opponent is the sitting state senator she's running against. Ghazala's opponent is apathy. Her opponent is apathy. That's her opponent. She lives in a district that is a blue district. I think the district went for me, didn't it, Ghazala?
23 points.
23 points. Who's counting? And we were out more than by 15, 16, or 17 points. So this is a blue district.
Hillary, too.
This is a blue district. The problem that she faces, and her real opponent, even more than the sitting state senator, is apathy. And here's what I mean by that. There's an election every year in Virginia, and they run in 4-year cycles. The presidential year, big turnout. You get your biggest turnout, you know, in the presidential year. The next year after the presidential year in Virginia, always a governor's race. That's usually a pretty good turnout. The next year after that, it's a federal election year, usually with the Senate race, and certainly with congressional races, usually get a pretty good turnout, as we did last year. But it's the 4th year of the cycle, and this is that year, 2019. There's no president, there's no governor, there's no U.S. Senate, there's no statewide race, there's no federal race, where the turnout is always the lowest. And the challenge for Ghazala and her campaign team is defeating an opponent whose name is on the ballot, but really thinking about defeating that apathy that is the normal low turnout dip in year 4 of the cycle. And so what you've done tonight by contributing to her, and many of you contributed before, and I hope some of you will, again, is you've enabled her to run a campaign that is really a grassroots type campaign. And the other thing I would encourage you to do is, if you do like grassroots politics, if you don't mind door knocking and calling or hosting events like this in neighborhoods throughout the district, the grassroots person-to-person makes more of a difference in the low turnout race than in any other race. Your marginal impact, if you get 5 extra votes, is going to be bigger in the low turnout race than in the presidential year. And so what you can do for her now that would be so helpful is help her with the person-to-person part of the campaign. That's what's going to win this for her. So anyway, now Ghazala, tell us how you're going to win. Give her a big round of applause.
I have been such a big fan of Senator Tim Kaine since I moved to Richmond and saw his great work in the city council and then his progression through all of Richmond and Virginia politics. And we have some mutual friends. We didn't get to talk about Bill Leidy, who has always been such a big fan of yours. And so thank you for being my senator. I really appreciate everything that you've done for Virginia. Thank you.
Yay!
So my first comment to Senator Kaine after I met him after the primary was, I'm glad to meet you. I'm going to be your senator, Senator. I'm looking forward to doing that. And I want to thank our wonderful, wonderful host, Paul and Julie Wise.
Thank you.
You've been incredibly gracious to open up your house to us this afternoon. Thank you for all your hospitality. Your home is just breathtaking. Thank you for everything that you've done today. Thank you. Appreciate it. I also want to thank our elected officials who are here today. We know Delegate Betsy Carr is here. We have Honorable Ed Jewett down here. Thank you so much for being here. Senator Mike Gray, the 95 corridor, made it just in time, so thank you. And thank you, Colette, for being here as well. I really appreciate it.
Beautiful woman.
And Secretary of Education, Arthur Carney, slipped by me. I didn't get to say hi to him. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Am I missing anybody else? I apologize. Oh, we've got Jennifer Hughes, Commissioner of the Revenue of Chesterfield.
Hello.
Thank you, Krista, and I appreciate you being here.
Packed
I apologize
house.
for not seeing you. Anybody else? Where's Mike?
Mike is running for the House.
Yes, Mike's running for the House. Thank you.
Mike S. Ace.
Anybody who's a candidate, please raise your hand.
Sheila.
And she
Wonderful candidates right here, so thank you everyone for
Yeah.
being here. I really appreciate it. So some of you know that I'm an English professor. I teach American literature, and usually what I do is give an hour-long lecture to my students. So I hope you're ready.
Excuse me,
An
sir.
hour-long lecture today.
I'm going
This
video
won't
live,
bother you
Facebook
too much
Live.
in this heat, right? What I wanted to begin today, however, is with poetry. I teach American poetry, and two of my favorite poets are Walt Whitman and Langston Hughes. And Walt Whitman, if you know good old Walt, he really is the bard of American poetry. He's really our Homer because he defines what it is to be an American. He creates the myth of Americanness. And for Walt Whitman, when he said, "I hear America singing," I hear America singing, he was really defining for us what the breadth and the scope of that is. It is the song of America, the song of democracy, the song of the vitality of a diverse and multifarious country. And he truly sang the song of America. A few decades later, Langston Hughes, the great African-American poet of the Harlem Renaissance, picked up Walt Whitman's Song of America and transformed it, because he said, "I too sing America." What a powerful and what a subversive, what a challenging statement that is. Because for so many centuries, the voice of the African American, the voice of the commoner, the voice of the disenfranchised had not been heard in any context, let alone the poetic context. And Langston Hughes stepped up and said, "I too sing America," because he recognized that this was the time for a change, that this was the time to bring in the diverse voices, the representative voices of our remarkable country. And as the senator just alluded to, we are living through a rather ugly, ugly period. We were reminded this week that there are some people who do not want to hear other people singing in America, or other people daring to claim this country as their own. When we have a president who tells 4 American congresswomen to go back to where you came from, denying their voice, denying their power, denying the fact that they have been duly elected by their constituents in their own counties, in their own states, that's a denial of all of us and of our democracy.
Yay! Packed house.
Now, some of you have heard that my own story of this campaign began in a moment of crisis. I had pulled into the parking lot at work one morning. It was February 2017, and I had a massive panic attack. I couldn't get out of the car because I had heard on NPR that morning that Donald Trump was refusing to let go of his Muslim ban. And the question that haunted me that morning was, do I truly belong in this country anymore? Do I have a place in this country anymore?
Yes, you do. Yay! Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that affirmation. I was just getting ready to say, winning the primary, going through the campaign process was the best affirmation, not for me, but for all of us, because it speaks to who and what we are as Virginians.
Yay!
The best comment that anybody made to me right after the primary came from somebody that I had never met, and he emailed it to me. He said, "Ghazala, I fully expected someone like you to emerge in Northern Virginia and to be successful in Northern Virginia. The fact that you have done this in Central Virginia tells us that we as Virginians have made it our agenda that it's time for a change." Amen. That we are ready.
Amen. Yes.
We are ready to lead the country forward. And I always quote my favorite senator who says, "When Virginia leads, America follows."
Yes.
We are going to truly lead in this. If we are going to embrace ourselves with the promise of our democracy, we have to focus attention on all of those issues that concern and are important to us. That we know that education is a public good, and that it ought to be equitable and just for all Virginians, regardless of the zip code that somebody comes from.
Exactly. It's housing patterns.
We know that health care is a right It's not a privilege for only those who can afford it.
Amen.
And we know that we have to work to protect our beautiful country and our beautiful state and its natural resources. That the environment is critical to us. We have to acknowledge the climate crisis as it is and not suffer in silence or in denial, because that is our future, that is our children's future, that is our grandchildren's future at stake. We saw the obstructionist policies of our Republican friends a few days ago, as they refused to even sit and talk about sensible gun legislation. And I know how frustrating that was for our elected officials to convene in Richmond and not to even have voices heard or issues discussed. We have to make a change. This is the time for change, and Virginia is ready for change.
Amen. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So I'm going to ask you to do everything you can, as our good senator just said, to come out and support not just me, but all of our Democratic candidates, because we desperately need to send a voice and a signal to Richmond and also to Washington, D.C., that as Virginia leads, the country will follow.
Yes. Amen.
And I hope that you will help me to share the message, not just in Virginia, but throughout America, that in 2019, Virginia is my home, and Ghazala Hashmi is an American name.
Yay! Packed house.
It's really hot out here. Let's go back inside. Thank you.
Thank you, Ghazala.